Good morning and welcome to this year's Legislative Breakfast. After 3 years of hosting this event virtually, it is truly a pleasure to have such a gathering of distinguished leaders from the business community and our esteemed legislative bodies. Your presence here today reflects your shared commitment to fostering economic growth, innovation, and collaboration within our vibrant community. This breakfast serves as a vital platform for meaningful dialogue between our business leaders and the policymakers who shape the legislative landscape. It's a unique opportunity to discuss the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead, as well as to explore ways in which we can work together to create an environment conducive to sustainable economic development. In the spirit of collaboration, this morning's agenda is designed to facilitate open and constructive conversations. Our distinguished panel of speakers will provide insights into the legislative initiatives that impact our local business, shedding light on the policies that will shape our economic landscape in the coming months and years. Your insights, experiences, and perspectives are invaluable in shaping the policies that will drive our economic future. Together, we can build a business-friendly environment that encourages innovation, investment, and job creation. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. May today's legislative breakfast be a catalyst for collaboration, understanding, and positive change. Thank you for your commitment to the growth and success of our community. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors who allow us to put this event on. Our signature sponsor, Germanna Community College, our breakfast sponsor, UVA Health Culpeper Medical Center, and our legislative sponsors, Culpeper Star Exponent and Culpeper Media Network. We'll start the program by allowing our legislators to take a moment to introduce themselves.
All right, well, thank you very much to the Chamber. Thank you for everyone that's going to present and everyone that's also here to observe and ask questions. My name is Nick Freitas. I represent the 62nd District, which is parts of Culpeper, parts of Orange, all of Greene, and all of Madison counties.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to see that this is such a well-attended event. My name is James Manitz, and I am the Legislative Director for Senator Bryce Reeves, who currently represents the 17th Senatorial District, but as of the swearing-in of the new legislature, will represent the 28th.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Raborden. I'm here on behalf of Congresswoman Abigail Spamberger, and we are very happy to be here, and thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate it.
So here to present on behalf of education, I'd like to welcome to the podium our first speaker, Dr. John Davis, Vice President of Administrative Services at Germanna Community College. Thank you so much for being here, John.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Davis. I'm the VP for Administrative Services at Germanna, which means I'm the guy who works sort of behind the scenes to make sure everything gets done, everyone gets paid, the facilities are in good shape, the IT equipment works, and whatnot. I wanted to send my regrets from Dr. Jan Gullickson, my boss, president of the college. She and the other VCCS presidents are down with the chancellor down at a meeting in Roanoke, so she regrets that she can't be here, but wanted me to send her greetings and to thank all of you for the support that you've provided to Germanna. I wanted to just take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about Germanna's priorities and sort of orient you to what's going on, some of the things we're doing in the community that we're very proud of. On the desk there in front of you is a sheet that lists the strategic, oh, that's better, sorry. The strategic priorities for the VCCS, and I'm not going to read that entire document to you, but I do want to go over a few of the points. We are really at an inflection point in the VCCS and statewide in education and post-secondary education. We feel like we're at the precipice of being able to really have a dynamic and a dynamic impact on the citizens of Virginia. And we feel like the Virginia community colleges are best positioned to sort of lead the way in educating our workforce and promoting workforce development and training. So the VCCS has put together a series of strategies. There were 3 strategies that they will be taking to the General Assembly and to the governor over the next couple of months as the new General Assembly is sworn in. And asking for a considerable amount of resources to help us do a variety of things. And I want to talk about a few of these things in relation to what Germanna is doing. And the first strategy, of course, is increasing capacity regionally. Our new chancellor, Dr. David DeRay, who took office back in the late spring, really wants us to focus on collaboratively working together with other community colleges in various regions. So for Germanna, that means working with, depending on where we are, we would work with Nova, we would work with Laurel Ridge now, it used to be Laurel Fairfax, be working with Piedmont and other colleges and ramping up workforce training that's going to meet the needs of our areas regionally. The first bullet there says build state-of-the-art career and technical programs and laboratory spaces. And now we're actually in one of those right now. I'm proud to say that we've worked with the Culpeper County Schools, and Dr. Brads is here, thank you, in partnering with the county in this facility. We offer some of our programming here at the college to residents, but we need more of this. We need, for Germanna, selfishly, we need one of these at different places in our service region. Our service region is large, but people don't realize our service region is larger than the state of Delaware in terms of square mileage. A lot of people don't realize that. So we've got a lot of areas that we need to impact. So that's one focus for us, is going to be expanding our facilities throughout our region to sort of replicate what we have here in Culpeper. Expanding Fast Forward to keep pace with industry demands. Fast Forward is a program that's been around for a couple of years that infuses money to people to go in and get very quick credentials, workforce credentials, things that take maybe a few weeks or a few months to get. Those students come out with that workforce credential, and then they're able to leverage that into maybe a promotion or a new job opportunity. We've had great success with that across the state and want to expand that. Establishing career placement centers to serve every college. We do that. We do have an existing career service center, but we want to expand those opportunities, particularly out here in the western region in Culpeper. Expanding access to online learning. Investing in marketing. You know, people often tell me, and I have some of my colleagues here from the college, they often tell me, when I tell them where I work, they say, "Oh, Germanna, the VCCS, yeah, you know, that's one of the best kept secrets in Virginia. It's a real gem." And I know they mean well, but I don't want to hear that. And I'll speak for my colleagues, and I'll speak for my president. We don't want to hear that we're the best kept secret in higher ed or in workforce training. We want to be well known. We want to be the first option when people think of that kind of thing to come and to be here for them. To that end, we're actually building, those of you who've been down Route 3 and seen our Locust Grove marquee sign that's in front of there, we're actually replicating that. We'll have a sign out here on Route 29 within the next 9 months or so. I'm working with VDOT and other organizations to make sure that happens, to really raise the level of awareness for what's going on. The second strategy is providing every high school student with a meaningful post-secondary credential, and that's a huge focus for our current governor and for the chancellor. Blurring the lines between higher ed and K-12, and you know, traditionally those things have been very siloed and very separate. We've had a number of programs that we've initiated over the years, including here in Culpeper, where we have our Germanna Scholars, where we have students from the Culpeper high schools who attend high school full-time, but they also attend Germanna and graduate with their high school diploma and an associate's degree that they can then transfer on to wherever they want to go. That program has been highly successful. We need to build upon that. We need to grow that. Having each high school student graduate from high school not just with a diploma, but with some sort of credential, whether that's an academic degree, whether that's a workforce credential, whatever that might be, it's imperative that we work toward that end. I am happy to say, in partnership with Culpeper Schools and other local school districts, Germanna was very successful. And if you don't know, we were awarded the second lab school from the Governor's Initiative Fund for creating lab schools statewide. Our project was approved a couple of weeks ago. We're very proud of that. The focus of that is out here in the western side of our service region in training and developing new teachers and priming the pump, if you will, for future generations so that all our areas, particularly some of our rural areas, are served and have available individuals to go into the teaching profession and build that. So we're very, very proud of that. We're very excited about what that's going to be and the partnerships that we have with our K-12 folks. And then lastly, the last strategy is funding what works. Funding in Virginia for community colleges is a bit of a strange animal. We are not funded. We are funded based on our FTE or full-time equivalent students for our credit programs. So we're funded based on that and then based on what we collect in tuition. We are not funded based on all the students that enroll for our workforce programs. That is a pivot point for us institutionally, moving a little bit away, not away from, but being more inclusive in terms of not just focusing on the transfer function, but focusing on the workforce credential function to get people short-term credentials that they can immediately get into the workplace and get put to work to make a positive economic impact. Again, we're not funded for that. So anything that we do on that front has to be sort of self-sustaining in terms of funding. Part of this larger ask from the VCCS is basically asking for seed money to help us do that, and then to hold us accountable for it. So it's a sort of a value proposition. Help us scale up this opportunity to do funding for cybersecurity, for the trades, for all these different highly in demand, highly needed areas, and then fund us, but hold us accountable to that based on what we produce in terms of credentials. And we feel like that'd be a win-win for us. So in summary, those are our strategic priorities as a system and as a college. On the back, you'll find what initially is from the system, sort of the price tag on some of these. We're going to pass the hat around at the end. No, I'm kidding. There are costs associated with this. This is a big ask on behalf of the system. So just wanted to make you aware of that. A couple other projects that I just wanted to make you aware of. Some of you have asked about the Locust Grove campus. The Locust Grove campus is our original campus, built 1970. It has been in play for replacement for the better part of a decade. However, that project has been stalled. We were well on our way to getting that building replaced when COVID hit, and some of the sort of economic circumstances in state finances related to bonding and state borrowing put a number of capital projects on hiatus, and unfortunately that was one of them for us. We are glad to report that that project is back in the hopper. The design phase is going on now. We anticipate that being done in mid-2024, and then construction can start, which for us, we've been told, is about a 15 to 18-month process. So it's been a long time. We're asking for your patience and forbearance. I've had to practice that myself over the years with this project. But sometime by late 2025, early 2026, we'll have a brand new facility, state-of-the-art facility out here at Locust Grove. So we're really proud and excited about that. Again, I mentioned the lab school opportunity that's we're really excited about and moving forward with our partners. We continue to grow. Germanna is one of really the only community college that has seen sustained growth in Virginia over the last 5 years. For those of you who don't know, the enrollment in community colleges really took a sort of precipitous decline around 2012, and it's just now, for many institutions, just now recovering. We've been at it for about 5 years, I'm proud to say, thanks to some work of some of my colleagues back here. And we're larger than we've ever been. We're awarding more credentials, degrees, and and those kinds of things than we ever have. We're having a huge impact on the community, and we just appreciate your support and any way that we can help you and partner with you in continuing to grow the college and make an impact on the community. So with that, thanks.
Yeah, Dr. Davis, I could real quick. I want to make sure I understand this correctly. I think the grand total with what you're looking for in the budget is around $600 million?
That's correct. For system-wide, that's correct.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we understand. We understand.
I was just going to write a check.
No,
with
right,
it.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, don't cash it tomorrow. But
Right. We understand it's a big ask. We also understand that we're transitioning into perhaps a more austere state budget upcoming, and we're aware of that. That's going to be the chancellor's banner to carry in the coming months.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I would ask is because you're right, it's going to be difficult as far as a more expansive budget,
Yes,
and
sir.
so some of it's going to be competing for existing funds which
Yes.
already exist. I've carried legislation a couple of years now that would have actually allowed community colleges to compete for available funds based off of the workforce credential students, and you can imagine that wasn't well received by certain other institutions within
Yeah.
higher education. But it is something that I would love to talk to you about as far as a potential consideration, because one of the things I really appreciate about what you're doing is that higher education is a wonderful thing. Not all credentials have equal economic value, and I think you guys have done a very good job on making sure that the credentials that come out of Germanna also correspond with good economic value. And so we certainly want to help in any way we can, whether it's negotiating expansion of funds or better allocation of existing ones. So thank you.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
We now welcome our next speaker, Ms. Donna Staten, COO of UVA Health, who will be presenting on behalf of healthcare.
Thank you, Amy. So good morning, everybody. It's great to be here this morning. We have been on a really, really incredibly exciting journey across UVA Health, and I want to take the opportunity to share some of that with you this morning, and then also talk a little bit about where we're headed as an organization. So I could not be more proud to be part of our UVA Health organization and representing the great work that's going on across the markets that we serve. And as Amy mentioned, I am the Chief Operating Officer of the community medicine arm of UVA Health. I think that's an important distinction to make. So UVA Health started on a journey a little over 2 years ago to really reimagine how healthcare is delivered across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And in doing so, community health was born out of that vision. And so today we are 3 hospitals that serve Culpeper, Prince William, and Haymarket. So we have 3 hospitals today. We have a number of outpatient locations, including a very, very strong medical group, a number of freestanding imaging centers, and we are on an extremely aggressive growth strategy. So I really want to talk to you about what does that mean for Culpeper specifically, and then really healthcare across the markets that we serve. As you know, Culpeper Hospital has been in existence for about 62 years, started by women because they didn't want to have to travel for their care. And so I could not be more proud than really to serve as the local administrator and COO for Culpeper. As many of you know, I am a native to Culpeper, so it is a really special gift to me to be able to give back to the community and where I live. And so over the last 2 years, we have been focused on migrating all of our locations in Culpeper in Northern Virginia from previous ownership. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because that is really looking in the rearview mirror. But what I think is important about that work is that it has really been foundational to set the stage for an exciting future, one that's filled with transformative work across all of UVA Health, specifically here in Culpeper and Northern Virginia. We have launched a 10-year statewide strategic plan that rolled out last year. So we are just now celebrating our 1-year anniversary of that plan, and that plan includes a number of strategic imperatives for us across community health. We've added more than 60 new community health care providers. I will tell you, in the years prior to that, we added 1. So if that gives you any indication of this growth mode that we're on, I'm happy to share that that is really where we're focused. We have welcomed more than 500 new team members. So again, some pretty astronomical growth, not only for our team members, but the services that we offer in the community. We employ approximately 2,700 team members directly. We have work for more than 2,000 contracted team members, and we have a network of more than 1,600 participating providers. With our local hospital now being part of UVA, patients should, and we expect them to be able to see seamless connectivity no matter where they're seen. That is providing safer and more connected care. So the ability to do that is really technology-based. And I won't bore you with all of the details, but at June of this past year, we migrated over 365 software systems across our 3 hospitals to all be on the UVA standard. And what does that mean for you as patients? It means that regardless of what site you go to from a point of service location, your experience should be consistent. Your information travels with you. And it also provides our physicians with a seamless way to be able to take care of our patients regardless of where they present. So the next thing that I wanted to pivot on and talk about is some of the exciting innovations that UVA Health has recently announced, and that is part of a launch of the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology. This was established about 1 year ago, and very excited to share that it breaks ground this Friday. The Biotechnology Institute holds the potential to transform medicine as we know it. It will spearhead the development of cellular and gene therapies that revolutionize how diseases are treated and cured. The Institute's work will focus on finding new treatments and cures for some of the most challenging and devastating diseases, including those for which we now lack effective treatments. Things like cellular therapy, gene therapy, nanotechnology, and drug delivery. Just a few examples of some of the important work that this center will focus on. This work will benefit not only community health, but residents across all of Virginia, from granting patients access to cutting-edge clinical trials, therapies, to creating an ecosystem of innovation, discovery, and manufacturing and industry here in the state. So a lot of new jobs will be generated out of the establishment of this new center. So while we're very excited for the innovation that this institute will bring in the coming years, there are some areas of healthcare that we know that we're very excited for partnership from our legislature on. And it's no surprise, and I know I see many of my partners in here, that behavioral health is one of those areas. I know we've experienced a surge, especially through COVID, of behavioral health needs across our entire community. With constrained access to behavioral health care across the state, we're very, very thankful for Governor Youngkin's Right Help, Right Now program. We also need to continue the great work of helping our local residents who need specialized behavioral health care. The Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association will be presenting a proposal for additional funding for crisis centers receiving psychiatric emergency departments, and UVA Health is very supportive of that. Just recently, our local emergency department can become quickly overwhelmed with behavioral health patients. The lack of access of beds for which those patients can be transferred for a higher level of care is real. We have, at times, we have patients staying in our emergency department between 5 and 7 days due to lack of ability to place them in an appropriate center. And our number one goal is to make sure that our patients are cared for and are safe. Meeting the growing demand for health care is another challenge facing hospitals and other related organizations everywhere. And it is a challenge that we at UVA Health are taking on directly. Let me just talk about some of the things that we're doing to help support that. We're investing in the professional growth of our team. I know we've talked a lot about workforce development with the work that Germana is doing. I will tell you, we are so very grateful for the work of this CTEC Center and some of the partnerships that we've been able to establish. We're also looking at ways that we can be really, really innovative with helping to develop pipeline for future talent. We offer very generous tuition reimbursement programs to our team members as they take on these new educational pursuits. We also recently established the very first UVA Health Leadership Institute. The first cohort of leaders will be going through that 8-month program journey in just about a month. And the key tenets of that are leadership and setting up their career for success. UVA, based out of Charlottesville, our main medical campus, also recently launched a program called Earn While You Learn. While that program currently resides only in Charlottesville out of the main medical center, it does focus on high school diploma or GED opportunities to train while on the job, like phlebotomy, pharmacy technicians, certified nursing assistants, and more. I will tell you that that is a dearth of access that we experience here in Culpeper. And when you think about a lot of those entry-level positions and the ability to create those pathways and some of the important work that's going on here at CTEC as well as at Germanna, those are vitally important to the ecosystem of healthcare. And so we need to continue to focus on opportunities of where we could invest in those programs for our youth and for others that want to pivot and make an educational change in the industry. The Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association will be presenting a request to expand this program across the Commonwealth, and we are very, very supportive of that. So we would ask for additional support when that request comes forward. There is a growing need for qualified healthcare workers across the entire state. This program eases the entry burden to careers, and we want to make this program widely available for all Virginians. And stepping back into our youth is one of the most successful ways that I think that we can create those pathways. These are just some of the ways that we're working to create local opportunities for our community. And I will tell you that volume is growing pretty rapidly. Very, very happy to share that we are making some major investments in our technology across our entire footprint. From most recently here at Culpeper, the introduction of our very first Da Vinci robot, which allows us to provide low intervention robotic surgery for our patients, allowing the recovery time to be cut dramatically low, people to go home the same day. We also introduced a brand new linear accelerator for radiation therapy, again, shortening the treatment time required for those types of therapies, and again, allowing patients to be able to remain in their local community for care. So we're very excited about all of the growth and the innovation. You know, we talked about the 60 providers that we've added. We have an aggressive goal to add more than 300 more providers in the course of the next several years. And while I can't give you the exact numbers for Culpeper that we're looking at, I'm very happy to share that we will have 2 full-time urologists starting with us in the early spring. We also will be standing up new primary care offerings in 2024. We know that primary care and general practitioners is a huge void for Culpeper, and we acknowledge and recognize that and have a commitment to be able to continue to invest in those services and keep those providers here in the community. So I hope that you can see the investment that we're making around growth and innovation, not just in our local community, but across all of UVA Health, and that how we're working towards our mission to transform health and inspire hope for all Virginians and beyond. Really excited to be part of UVA Health at this time. I think it is transformative work that we're doing across all of our markets, and you as patients and consumers of healthcare are also happy to share that we recently were announced across the entire nation as 4 consecutive Leapfrog Grade A scores across all 4 of our hospitals. And that is pretty huge. That is our continued commitment to quality and providing the best care local for our patients. So very excited about that. So I'll pause there. I know I covered a lot of information, but open it up for any additional questions that you might have.
Yeah, one quick, first of all, thank you very much. Da Vinci robot, obviously something like that requires a lot of upfront investment, and there's still, insurance and risk involved and whatnot. Does that does that already cause a decrease in overall price to the consumer? Or is it something where that's anticipated to do that in the future?
You know, that's a great question. What I will tell you is that, you know, we don't set the price for insurance, right? But what it does is it translates to lower pocket cost to patients because they're able to go home the same day. And
Okay.
it can be treated as an outpatient procedure as opposed to requiring an inpatient stay. So that's a good thing, right? And it's also safer for the patient and produces a better quality outcome. And I will also say that, you know, when you think about the upfront investment cost, this is one of the things that I'm very pleased to be able to talk about. You know, it's the power of scale with UVA. And so our upfront investment on that was very minimal. And it's because we're able to leverage the relationship with UVA and be able to piggyback off some of the great contracts that they have to be able to bring those services into our communities.
Excellent. And then the only other thing, when you say entry, easing the entry burden with respect to, is that for just people entering into the medical field?
It is. I mean, it's, you know, healthcare is a complex place. When you think about all of the different types of skills that you need to make the healthcare engine work, you need a lot of team members that are trained, they have certifications. So a lot of the bridge work that Germana is working on to allow them to come out into the workforce with those certifications allows them to hit the ground running. So we are direct recipients of a lot of the great work that's going on here at CTEC with their CMA and CNA program and their EMT program. And so we are also looking, and I will tell you, we've just started implementing with our Germana students, we're hiring them on as technicians so that we can create that pipeline for them to be able to work while they're going through school. As we know, many of our Germana participants are they are working parents, right? And so they are not full-time students. They are wearing many, many hats. And so I think this is just another way that we're looking to support these students as they're going through their program development, and it's been very, very successful.
Okay, and then the only other thing I would ask about, and this is probably something to follow up later with both you and Doctor and whatnot, is obviously we've done a lot of work with respect to increasing access to healthcare, but I don't think there's been a corresponding increase in the supply. And that's causing huge burdens with respect to wait times, costs, et cetera, which happens every time you have increased demand, but you don't have subsequent increase in supply. And one of the things I'd be really interested in discussing is as we look at the credentialing processes that people within the medical field go through, obviously there's certain disciplines which require a great deal of schooling. There's other ones which require less. I'd be really interested to look at medical credentialing the same way that we've looked at other industries where we've asked ourselves, does someone need to go through all of this training and education in order to provide these services? Is there a way to essentially say we're going to have one credential for these sorts of services in order to increase the number of people that we have providing them versus requiring someone to go to maybe a more comprehensive training course? And so that's something we want to do correctly because obviously we want to maintain quality, but I think it's going to be a very important question for us to ask. The example I like to use is Special Forces 18 Delta goes through pretty extensive medical training. When they're overseas, they can deliver a baby, they can fix your goat, and they can fix a sucking chest wound under fire while calling in a 9-line medevac under fire. If they come back to the United States and they give you stitches, they're a criminal. And there seems to be some sort of disconnect there with available talent, training, and really about how do we close that gap in order to get the appropriate credentials to where that person can provide commercial services within the U.S. And so I'd be interested in that discussion.
Let me address that because I think your point is is well made in that we are actually taking on some of that burden within the healthcare system ourselves and reimagining the way that the care team delivery is structured so that we can do exactly what you're describing. So, for example, we're bringing technicians into our ED. We need to be very deliberate about what their scope of service is and that they're not stepping out and doing something because in healthcare, we're highly regulated. And so that's where we get in trouble, and we can lose our accreditation with Medicare and Medicaid, which is our funding mechanism. And so those controls are in place. But at a state level, I think there are a lot of opportunities to create more pathways for services in. The best example that I can give you right now is certified nurse anesthetists. I can't say that, CRNAs. So there is an undersupply of those today, and so we're paying a premium cost in order to be able to consistently staff that service. In other states, I know a team of mine went to Georgia recently and learned that there is a 2-year accreditation program available in Georgia where you can get certified to function as a extender for an anesthesiologist. Virginia doesn't recognize that program, nor do they offer it. So those types of creative things and the ability to replicate some of those models that have worked in other states and bring those to Virginia, I think are exactly the types of things that we need to be able to do.
Yeah, certainly appreciate that, and any specifics that you have like that, because one thing I've learned about legislatures is they're somewhat risk averse. But if something's been done in another state and it's seen success, it's far more likely to be able to make it through the legislature here. So, again, thank you very much for the work that you're doing and continue to do, and look forward to working with you on it.
Firstly, I'd just like to thank you guys. We had the opportunity a couple months ago, I think it is now, to tour the facility and sit down with all of UVA Health and Culpeper Medical Center and see the great work that you guys are doing. So I'd just like to commend you all on your outreach and openness to the community. I think that's very significant. And also recognizing that you need to share when you need support, just like we do when we go to the hospital. I'd like to ask a little bit more about primary care. I know we talked a little bit about it when we met last time, but do you have specific timelines on when you're ramping up that primary care offering? And are there any ways that we can better support that expedited timeline, because it is such a gap right now in a lot of communities, including Culpeper?
Yeah, no, great question. So we do have a location that we are finalizing the lease on now, and so the hope is that the build out of that location will be about 6 to 9 months. So we hope to bring that new location online probably late summer, early fall of calendar 2024, where I think where we need support and what things that we could accelerate is just the recruitment of primary care, right? That is a big challenge for Culpeper specifically, because we have no problem recruiting into our Northern Virginia markets, because again, a lot of people coming out, they want to be in a more urban environment. They like, the Northern Virginia feel. It takes a very special type of provider to want to come to Culpeper and be in this market. And we've seen this not only in primary care, but we've seen this in every single specialty. So we're having to be very creative in how we attract talent to this market, and we all love it and know how special it is. And I think once we get people here, they actually see it as well. But getting people to come and entertain it is probably our biggest challenge. The other pieces we can expedite, we can control, we can accelerate. But the desire to be able to bring talent and keep talent here, I think some of the best things that we've seen to work is actually programs that allow students to be able to see healthcare in the community, and then they come back, right? And so we have multiple examples here in Culpeper of nurses and physicians that actually are local to this community that went away to school and then came back. So more opportunities, I think, for shadowing. I know we do a lot of work with career partners here in Culpeper to be able to show those types of opportunities and give exposure. A medical camp, I think, would be another tremendous opportunity that we could do to generate some of that interest early on. And that, again, just requires resources and commitment. That would be wonderful to have support for that.
We will now welcome our next presenter to the stage, Mr. Brian Rothamel, who is the Director of Economic Development here in Culpeper County. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Thank you. When having a wireless microphone is dangerous for me. When I was in high school, I took a music technology class. In the capstone project, we had to write a song. Everyone in the class was a guitarist. They either thought they were going to become Kiss or Dave Matthews, so they all wrote songs. I was a pianist, and I wrote a rap song. And my teacher was so excited, he said, we should do a rap battle for the whole school. And I won. I was the only person that was in it. So I am not going to recount my 18-year-old rap song, but if you want the 2 lines afterwards, I still remember those. I'm here to talk to you about workforce and economic development. I'm going to primarily talk about workforce. What has already been said, I'm going to touch on some of those things as well. Those are great kind of segues into what we have going on. Just a little bit about me. I'm on the Virginia Economic Developers Association Board of Directors. I'm also on the public policy. So I'll be around and available during session, specifically in February, and then also after session. I would love to just continue the conversation as things come up. There we go. First, I want to thank you for the Workforce Development and Advancement Agency. I'd like to thank you for the Workforce Development and that. I almost put it for the whole slide. I can't stress how important that was for state government when we talk about workforce. Having 50-something departments spread across several secretariats led to a broken system. In 2018, I was laid off from a job, I had to go through VEC for unemployment, and that process was so difficult for me. The fact that we're able to now have everyone on the same page is a huge improvement to government. And we need to continue to find ways to lower that bureaucracy that we've already mentioned about credentialing. But moving that under the Secretary of Labor, and I just heard from Deputy Secretary Reedy from Labor, they're already seeing what can positively happen, and that's great and fully support that. I want to give you what I see as an economic developer. Things that are working, the VGIP program, the Virginia Jobs Investment Program, the Talent Accelerator Program, VTAP, those are 2 fantastic programs. The nice thing is it gives an expanding or a new company to Virginia the opportunity to pick their pathway. If they want to have the governor announce that they're hiring, they go hire, and then we give them some money on the back end to help with the training that they did in-house. That's VGIP. That's great. If they want the state to develop a training program through the community college system and forego the cash but have the state design a program, they can do that. Both of those are great, and continuing the funding for that I find very important. Continue the workforce consolidation efforts and everything that will come. I'm sure there's going to be asks coming out of the Secretary of Labor for that. That is, continuing that effort is very important. I think I talked to someone that was in Governor Allen's administration, and at that time, they had talked about consolidating the workforce. So it's been a long time coming. Eliminating of regulations, we already hear that from health. Like, for one example that Deputy Secretary Reedy provided is we didn't have reciprocity. Well, that's a hard word for me. We didn't have that for some of the easy credentials. I mean, Delia Freitas, you just gave a good example of, does that make sense? Wherever we can do that, I don't have specific examples, but just where we can, that makes sense. And one thing we need to talk about this is the current legislative employer mandates that we have. Employers will need to be creative in hiring. It's a demographic issue. Unfortunately, we're not going, everyone always says, I wish it would get back to how it was pre-COVID. What we're experiencing now, we would have experienced by 2030. The signs we're all showing. We have a demographic issue. We have less people available in the workforce. Less people. 2008, we had birth rates fell off a cliff. We're starting to see that get to 18 years, and we're going to start seeing the babies that were born in the aughts are starting to come into the workforce. That's a smaller generation than the baby boomers who are leaving the workforce. We're doing a great job in Virginia. I just saw the governor announce the highest participation rate that we've had, but employers are still feeling that pinch. Us mandating and making it harder for employers we're not going to legislate our way out of this. Employers are going to have to come up with the solutions and find the creative. There's just not going to be a one-size-fit-all for all of the industries. And then our other incentive programs, such as Commonwealth Opportunity Fund, the Governor's Fund, those are all very important and can keep those going. Things I worry about most is a thing I worry about most, and that's affordable childcare. The current federal fiscal support not continuing would be detrimental to the industry. There's no way around it. And I mean all industries. We're talking, once you lose a job, because that's what's going to happen, is that childcare workers are going to be laid off. And once they lose that job, they're not going to just wait for the federal government to swoop in, bring the funding back, and go, I want to go back to that industry that you just told me wasn't important enough to be funded originally. We will lose childcare workers, and then that will affect how many people can work. My wife and I, we have 2 kids. We have a 5-year-old in public school, and we have a 1-year-old, almost 2-year-old in childcare. If our childcare facility closes, our only option is one of us drops out of the workforce. And that's across, that is across many families. Childcare is already, I don't want to say it's broken, but it is bent very far. For my wife and I, the first person to know that we were pregnant after my family was our childcare facility, because we had to get on the wait list 8 months ahead of time just to make sure that we had the availability. I don't have a good answer for you on what to solve it. It's money. I know that. That's a huge part of it. I don't know. I would love to find the answers. I would love to have the answer, but I just know if we lose that funding and we have facilities closed, it's going to be a tremendous effect across our greater economy. And that's something, September 2024, as the federal money runs out, that is something I worry about a lot. Moving forward, we have, for our state legislators, we have our VITA reception and VITA Day, which will be in mid-January. I will not be, I won't be able to be at either of those, but if you have questions throughout session, please feel free. If you're like, I need a local economic developer to give me some background on this, I'm always available and would love to chat. I will be around the General Assembly building in mid-February. Beautiful building. That I'm going to miss Pocahontas. I'm sure you will too. No, I won't either. The VITA-supported legislation that comes up in session, I'm happy to share that as we start seeing bills come through. And then after session, I would love to just continue that conversation as things come up.
No, thank you very much. The only thing I would ask for kind of help from VITA on is when it comes to employer mandates legislation, that's something we need assistance on when we're talking about that, because this is a regular problem that we get into in the General Assembly, where you're giving politicians the ability to essentially make an incredible number of mandates on employers, and there's no corresponding cost directly to the budget. And so it ends up becoming a really easy way for politicians to say, oh, look what we did for employees, or look what we did for this, when in reality there's a bunch of second and third order effects that result in increased prices and making it more difficult to hire people. And it always sounds so good on paper. And so we do need help being able to articulate that we obviously we want what's best for employees and employers, but when we intervene as much as we currently are, and the amount of intervention is incredible at this point, it really causes problems with employment, and so we need that help to make that argument.
We are well we understand that that could be a topic of discussion, especially in this session. Being number 2 in top states for business is really good. 2 out of 50, but I like to be 1. So, all right, thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Brian. I will now invite to the stage Brian Phipps, who is going to present to us on behalf of Housing. He's the president of People Incorporated. So thank you so much for being here, Mr. Phipps.
Thanks so much, Amy. I appreciate it. So it's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. Before I get started, I would like to echo, some of Brian's comments a few minutes ago about the need for childcare. People Incorporated, and we'll chat more about this as we go through, provides a wide variety of services throughout the Commonwealth. Chief among those, the Head Start and Early Head Start program, fee-for-service child care centers, and the need for those services is really prevalent in all the communities that we're working in. So for what it's worth, we would like to double down and say absolutely. That is definitely a challenge that we are seeing within the communities that we serve. So who is People Incorporated? People Incorporated of Virginia is a community action agency. And for those of you that might not be aware, community action agencies are a relatively unique type of organization. The community action movement started in the mid-1960s as part of President Johnson's War on Poverty. And his idea was essentially to empower local organizations with resources and support to address the needs within communities. So our mission has been very much the same over the last 60 years. Next year we will be celebrating our 60th anniversary, but it's really geared towards addressing the causes and symptoms of poverty. And People Incorporated over the years has developed a wide variety of services and strategies that are really intended to make our communities a better place to live. Over the last decade or so, we have been expanding our service area. Our traditional home base has been in the southwestern part of the state, but beginning in 2008 and 2009, especially coming out of the economic recession then, we began expanding our services up through the northern Shenandoah Valley and have been working in Culpeper since 2010. So we continue to work and really want to be a part of the communities that we serve. So I'm very grateful that the Chamber invited me to chat with you all this morning about housing needs. Given our mission, developing affordable housing is a strategy that we have used for the last 60 years to really help move families out of poverty. We are one of the most active nonprofit affordable housing developers in the state. Right now we have a little over 1,100 housing units under management. We do provide all of our own property management services, and we have properties located certainly in the northern Piedmont area, but over on the Eastern Shore, South Side, and even in Upper East Tennessee. So we have been very heavily engaged in not only housing for families, but also housing for seniors that live within our community. So whenever we think about housing, there are some pretty evident drivers of what creates the needs for affordable housing. And in 2020, the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission sponsored a housing study. I had an opportunity to review that when it was released at the time, but certainly spent some time over the last week or so revisiting some of the information that was provided in that study. And as we sit and think about this, one of the most evident drivers of the need for housing is population. And Brian commented a few minutes ago about the aging workforce, and certainly that some of those millennial younger age groups are just now beginning to enter into the labor force. In Culpeper County right now, you'll see the two biggest population swaths are essentially Gen X, which are folks that will be approaching retirement age over the next 2 decades. followed closely by millennials, folks that are entering the workforce and beginning to have families. So, what that means from a housing perspective is essentially the population will continue to age somewhat. Right now within our communities with baby boomers and seniors, certainly there's already an established need for senior housing, for lack of a better term for it. That need will only continue to increase as we go forward. So thinking about how, as a community, we are able to address that need for housing, in addition to all of the other needs, is certainly going to be a topic of conversation moving forward. Now, on the population side, over the next 20 years, the population of Culpeper County is expected to increase another 30%. So whenever you think about the challenges impacting the county now from a housing perspective, that's only going to grow in the future. There's going to be more and more people moving into the community, which is only going to exacerbate some of the issues we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. Also important to understand that, the availability of housing encompasses a wide variety of different types of housing. About a quarter of the housing units that are available in Culpeper County right now are rentals, followed by some seasonally vacant, think hunting cabins, think Airbnbs, those kinds of housing units. But by far the most common type of housing within the community is owner occupied. So think single family homes within the community. So that brings us to the question of how much housing is needed within Culpeper County and the surrounding area. When we talk about housing, we tend to do that in terms of income levels. And the reason for that is, obviously, families and individuals that make more money can afford market rate housing. Folks that don't make as much money cannot afford it. So you have to think about developing housing that is able to be attainable to a wide variety of different income groups. So the 2020 study that I mentioned a few minutes ago addressed and projected the demand for housing within Culpeper in terms of area median income, or AMI. Just for your information, I believe the area median income for Culpeper County is somewhere around $68,000, $70,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So as you're thinking about the income levels that are shown here, that is all a percentage of that $70,000, for lack of a better way to state it. People Incorporated works in a wide variety of communities throughout the state. And this conversation around affordable housing is happening in many of those communities. It's not just happening in Culpeper. It is something that we talk about in Prince William County, that we talk about in Dickinson County, which is one of the most rural communities in the state. But in Culpeper County in particular, there's been a lot of discussion about the need for workforce housing, or for housing that is targeted to our teachers and our public service officials and our policemen. And you can see the need for that type of housing if you look at this chart. While definitions vary, I would submit to you that that workforce housing income level is probably in that 80 to 128% area median income level. So you can see just by looking at that, there's a demand just based on this information for 288 of those housing units in Culpeper County. What's more distressing, though, is if you look at the lower end of the income levels that you see there. For households making less than 50% of the area median income, so let's say $35,000 per household, there's a need for over 600 affordable housing units for that population, and for 50 to 80%, 430 units. So as I look at this information, what this tells us is that there is a need for housing across income levels. We can debate what the best strategies are, what type of housing is most needed, and I don't think you can really go wrong as long as you're talking about the need for additional housing units. So coming out of that study, it really echoed the point that I just made, is that a healthy mix of housing options are what communities need to be able to move forward. We are very strong believers in the idea that housing is not only a health issue, but it's also an economic development issue. To be able to create jobs within communities and for the communities to stand to benefit from the economic impact of those jobs, you need to have the workforce living within the community. And I think certainly in Culpeper and the surrounding area, that's not always the case. I'm sure all of us are, accustomed to commuting to different communities or have family members that do that to be able to live and work within the region. And, that is one of the very common laments that, we have certainly in other parts of the state, that we are, being successful in creating jobs, but very often the workers can't afford to live there in many of the communities that we're working in. So thinking about housing strategies that are capable of addressing a wide variety of housing needs in a thoughtful and deliberate way is really one of the primary recommendations that came out of that study. So it's very easy to be able to quantify and say that we need additional housing units. One of the challenges we face as an affordable housing developer is just public perception in many ways of what affordable housing is or what housing in general is. It's not always the best well-received topic of discussion in many of the communities that we serve. There is definitely a stigma associated with all types of housing, but certainly housing that is targeted to individuals and households with lower incomes. So moving forward, it's very important that as a community we are able to talk certainly about what our needs are, but also what our intentions are in terms of developing communities where all of us feel welcome and have an opportunity to live and be a productive member of society. As I mentioned, Culpeper and the Rappahannock region is not alone in having a need for additional affordable housing. The Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, on behalf of the General Assembly, in 2020 issued a report that found that there was a shortage of at least 200,000 affordable housing units across the state at the time. That's that 1,100 or so units that we were talking about earlier here in Culpeper and the surrounding community. So certainly this is an issue that is challenging to a wide variety of communities. So to begin addressing and getting input into how we can at least start to address some of the challenges. The Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, at the behest of new Governor Youngkin in 2020, conducted a number of listening sessions that were held throughout Virginia. And the purpose of those listening sessions was to certainly get the input from local governments as well as nonprofit affordable housing developers. The local business community, chambers participated in these sessions to really try to learn more about what are some of the solutions and barriers to begin to address the need for housing throughout the Commonwealth. And coming out of, and I believe there were 7 of those sessions held across the state, coming out of those sessions were essentially 4 priority areas that were identified. The first and chief among them are being able to develop inclusive zoning, land, and availability of land throughout communities. Certainly zoning at a local level plays a huge role in where you can locate housing. It's a topic of discussion, whether you're addressing the need for more data centers or commerce, but certainly housing factors into that conversation. And local governments have a lot of influence on where and how housing is developed within communities. So understanding that local land use policies, zoning, certainly community perspective about housing, all of that plays a role into our ability to begin to address some of the housing concerns. I think echoing from our health presentation a little bit earlier, there are also regulatory concerns associated with the development of housing, particularly around the DEQ requirements, Department of Environmental Quality. There has been some significant changes to legislation over the last 15 years or so that has really impacted the ability to develop housing, especially new construction. As an aside and as an example, we developed a subdivision in another part of the state back in 2008, at the time with the idea that we would do a second phase in that property. And it took us almost 15 years to get the second phase of that development done. And whenever we were able to revisit that, one of the primary barriers was regulatory in nature, and developing some of the stormwater management changes in legislation cost us almost an additional $500,000 to be able to redo that development. So these, certainly we could talk a lot about regulation, but it has an economic impact. And we would by no means advocate for laissez-faire and a laissez-faire approach to government, but it is something that, as we are thinking about things that can be done, being able to streamline permitting, being able to find common sense ways to regulate development is certainly an issue in the affordable housing realm as much as it is in the other parts of our community. Many of us know coming out of the pandemic, there were nationwide, there were challenges with the workforce and the labor pool. I think that's particularly evident in the contracting occupations. There is a shortage of contractors. I think generally throughout the nation, but certainly to work on housing and especially affordable housing projects. It's very difficult to find contractors that have the bandwidth without having to wait a year so they can get to your project. So figuring out innovative strategies, and I really like the interplay we were talking about the trades and being able to do apprenticeships and finding ways to get our youth engaged and excited about the types of occupations that are available. It really make a difference, to start addressing a number of the challenges that we're seeing within our communities. And finally, having real conversations about what affordability is in each of the communities throughout the Commonwealth and in Culpeper County. It's very easy for us to take a look at the changing demographics and try to project, what levels of income are going to be affordable to a given household. But having real conversations about what that means for folks that are living in the community, especially at the lower levels of income, is really an important feature. So, certainly there is an emerging need, a present and emerging need for additional housing in Culpeper and the Rappahannock region in general. And all of this is taking place amidst some of the most volatile housing markets that we've seen in many, many years. You'll notice on that graph there, it's a graphic of year-to-date home sales in Culpeper County, January to August of 2023. You'll see that it's at its lowest level right now in terms of the number of homes that it's sold than it has been in 5 or 6 years. And that is really indicative of what's going on with interest rates. It's indicative of what's going on with just a lack of supply for additional housing within communities. So I think one of the things I want to leave you with is that, there are very many factors that influence the quality of the housing stock within communities, whether it's ownership, whether it be for the rental markets. And, interest rates, where they're at right now, play a huge role in the ability to develop anything in general, but certainly in the affordable housing realm. Shifting demographics that we talked about, inflationary pressures, just the cost of infrastructure for new developments has skyrocketed over the last couple of years. One of the things we're becoming much more, I think, sensitive to, as I mentioned, many of those 1,100 housing units that we have developed over the last decade or so have been at an affordable level. As we have developed our capacity, we've become very accustomed to using different financing tools to be able to get that affordable housing developed. And many of those financing tools are targeted to specific income levels. So as an example, for households 60% AMI or less.
as you start talking about developing housing for that workforce housing that we were talking about, anything less than market rate, which a market rate home would be, what the market will be. That's where developers spend a lot of their time developing. They want to develop more market rate housing. There is a lack of financing tools that are readily accessible to be able to address some of those higher income levels. So when we start talking about workforce housing, we need to figure out ways to develop new financing tools that can be targeted specifically to the development of that type of housing. Right now, it's just not as readily available because these conversations haven't been going on for decades. This is a relatively new occurrence, I think, in many of the communities that we're serving. So the question becomes, well, what do we do about it? You know, we can chat all day about, you know, the needs. We could lament what we need to do in communities, but there are some very real things, and I think one of the most important things we can do is begin to have those conversations. As I said earlier, many of the communities we work in are beginning to have that conversation, and I think Culpeper is a wonderful example of how that is happening and how that can really produce some good outcomes for communities. You know, very recently, the Culpeper Department of Human Services, you know, convened a group of community members to begin addressing the affordable housing needs in communities, to look at the demand that we're going to have for elderly populations going forward, and what do we do about to address the homelessness issues within our communities. So the fact that these communities are having community-wide conversations like this is really a key first step in that process. But like anything, it takes money to develop resources. I think certainly a number of years ago, the Virginia General Assembly took the important step of establishing a state housing trust fund. I know that going into this session, there are some discussion about trying to get a budget amendment to increase the availability of funds in the state housing trust fund. That has been a good tool that we have used over the last few years. One of the challenges encountered by local jurisdictions is this being empowered and incentivized to begin to address their affordable housing issue. Being able to offer developers incentives such as tax abatements, incentives to streamline their permitting processes, to do zoning overlays, all of these things impact on the ability and its speed with which you could develop new housing units. And it's a question of scale. Certainly Culpeper across the state, and that scale is impacted by the speed with which you can do it. So I think common sense adjustments, making sure that local jurisdictions have the opportunities and ability to support public-private partnerships to be able to make zoning changes that are necessary to incentivize more housing. We certainly would advocate for some common sense legislation in those areas. And finally, to begin to support the expansion and development of new financing tools, like I just mentioned. The low-income housing tax credit is a part of the IRS tax code. It's been around since the late 1980s. It's a wonderful tool for developing housing. During and as we came out of the pandemic, there was some discussion about the middle-income housing tax credit, the BITAC. I think that is certainly something that is gone off the radar a little bit, but I think it's that kind of creative thinking of how do we address some of these other income levels. That piece of legislation in particular could have helped, I think, there. And finally, some common sense support to help homeowners, to help give first-time home buyers access in this increasing interest rate environment by making down payment assistance more available, by being able to support zoning changes around that addresses minimum lot size. Some of the issues that we have with land use are all areas where I think there's room for conversation is how we are able to address the need for housing from a policy perspective. We certainly can talk theoretically about this, that we are trying to put our money where our mouth is in many ways. In 2021, we purchased an existing market rate property in Culpeper. It's located on the East Street in town, and rehabilitated that property. Essentially preserving and creating 28 additional housing units within the community. I'm very proud to say that Development won a Governor's Housing Award for Best Preservation and Rehabilitation Project in the state whenever we did it. And an example of, again, the Culpeper community really coming together to make things happen is evidenced by our Lightfoot Apartments project, which we're working on right now. This is a project that we have developed in collaboration with Culpeper County and the town of Culpeper. They donated about 6 acres of land to People Incorporated to be able to make this development work. And by the end of 2025, we'll have 60 new affordable housing units available within the community. And we're hoping to break ground on that project sometime at the first of the year. So I think being able to build trust among all of us as community members and having a track record of success will only help to create some momentum for developing and again, to address our local housing needs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if folks might have questions.
No, thank you very much, Bill and Brian. Just the two things I'll put out there, just to be kind of one and blunt. I think there's a lot of issues with respect to regulations which stands in the way of effective building, and some of that is federal, some of it's state, some of it's local. I remember going out to a site once where the guy could not get an answer. DEQ said one thing, Army Corps of Engineers said another thing. They both came out to the site. They said, can he get string credits or not? Corps of Engineers said yes. DEQ said no. It said, yeah, it was just part of the problem. So I'm very sympathetic to those issues which stand in the way of building. I'm going to view it with a certain degree of skepticism whenever it comes to taxing more money to take out of my community, to bring to the state, to put into a fund, which that will be set to developers that have the best lobbyists. That part I'm very skeptical of, I'm very protective of, because I do think so much of this is a local issue. The only other thing too that I'd like to say that I get concerned about, and some of the programs you mentioned are long lasting and have a pretty good reputation with respect to investments or programs with respect to loans, with respect to down payment assistance. But I'm certainly old enough to remember in the early 2000s when the government decided it was going to get very much involved in encouraging home ownership and development, and came up with a lot of risky loan schemes that they didn't necessarily mandate at the federal level, but they heavily encouraged through subsidization. And it led to one of the biggest housing bubbles we've had in U.S. history. So I just want to make sure that when we do this, we're allowing the market to function the way the market functions, which is efficiently and effectively. I get concerned anytime we're going to offer even more intervention, either from the state level and especially from the federal level, when it comes to attempting to manipulate that market to go in the directions that we want. So very, very happy to work with you on how we can reduce some of those regulations and reduce some of the problems that stand in the way of effective, safe, competent building practices. But I'm going to be extra skeptical when it comes to the expenditure portion.
Completely understood. We look forward to it as well. All right, thank you.
All right, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you to the legislators for being here as well. Let's start off with one question. If you file a Schedule F, please raise your hand. Okay, there's 3 of us in here, 4 of us in here that are actually involved in production agriculture. Just providing you all with some facts so that you understand the importance of production agriculture, not only in the state, but across the nation. Less than 2% of the population is actually involved in production agriculture. And we're coming up now on 4 generations of population being removed from the farm. So there's less and less understanding of agriculture practices and what goes into that to make the food that was served here today and the folks that are on our backs. Agriculture is Virginia's largest private industry. When you combine agriculture with forestry together in 2021, the total economic impact was over $105 billion and provided more than 490,000 jobs. For every job in the Commonwealth with agriculture, it supports 1.6 jobs in other industries in Virginia. So I cannot stress enough the importance. We are blessed here in Virginia to be very diverse in our agriculture. Many of our commodities and products rank in the top 10 among all U.S. states. In 2021, Virginia was third for the production of tobacco, fourth in seafood landing, sixth for apples, pumpkins, and turkeys, eighth for peanuts, and ninth for broilers. In 2022, Virginia's agriculture and forestry exports were valued at more than $5.1 billion. Our top 5 markets were China, Canada, Venezuela, Taiwan, and Egypt. And China imported more than $1.45 billion in agriculture purchases, with Canada totaling more than $370 million. Virginia alone has 41,500 farms. Virginia farm operators cover 7,700,000 acres. 97% of Virginia farms are family owned. So there are some misconceptions out there based on farm size that these large farms are corporately owned, and that is not necessarily true. There are some, but the vast majority of farms are family owned and operated. Virginia is home to over 18,957 new and beginning farmers. As we see the age of the average farmer continue to increase, it is becoming more and more important for us to bring that next generation along. Some of you might know, some of you might not know, but for several generations there and years, it was very much discouraged, as a farmer, that you wanted a better life for your child and not to have to face the daily struggles, and they were encouraged not to go into production agriculture, and we're seeing the after effects of that. So within the past 15, 20 years, there's been a big shift back the other way. There's been a lot of people that don't come from an agriculture background that love the idea and concept of farming, and we are creating avenues to do that through several different organizations and some with the state as well. So just some background there. What we would ask for help from legislatively is the support of best management practice funding. General Assembly was gracious enough to provide full funding in 2023. But we would ask to support an additional deposit to the Virginia Natural Resources Commitment for fiscal year 26 for $123,884,449 to meet the demand of to meet the need of installing conservation practices. Support $1 million for the general fund for 3 nutrient management planners and 1 data service position that maintains data reporting platforms. You may not be aware, but there is a drastic shortage of certified nutrient management planners. There are regulations in place that, depending on your farm size, you are required to have a certified nutrient management plan written and submitted yearly. And with there not being enough certified planners, that is causing several issues there. Support funding for engineering positions to support local soil and water conservation districts and implementing conservation practices requiring an engineer approval, and extend the refundable agriculture best management practices tax credit to 2027. We would also like to oppose any legislative or regulatory proposals to restrict the use of EPA and USDA approved pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or other crop protectants. Oppose any legislation restricting or prohibiting common methods of applying crop protectants. Like you've heard several of the other speakers today talk, workforce and labor shortages is an issue, especially in the agriculture industry as well. So with the advancement in things such as drone technologies, the average consumer out there doesn't necessarily like the idea of drones, period, and don't understand why we have a need to use those in agriculture or helicopters or planes to apply crop protectants. And also they don't understand that those forms of technology that have been developed that we have the ability to now use are also less impactful to the land. So if I'm flying something over as compared to driving a piece of equipment over that land, I'm definitely preventing less compaction to that land and soil as well. We would also like for the creation of a Virginia Department of Forestry Office of Working Lands that will ensure that forest land can continue to be harvested and farmland can continue to be utilized by farmers in the future without arbitrary restrictions limiting farming operations. Farmers are urging legislators to support legislation that will consolidate the programs in the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services and the Virginia Department of Forestry regarding the preservation of working lands. We also know that there is a shortage of large animal veterinarians across the U.S., and this is only going to become much worse with the federal regulations that just came into play this past June, which changed a lot of over-the-counter medications that farmers had available at their use to RX only. So now we didn't have enough large animal vets to start with, and now we're putting even more on them because if I had a cow with a mastitis infection, I can't go anymore and buy that medicine to treat her. Now I have to contact the vet, and hopefully they can squeeze me into their schedule sometime and come give me the medicine that I need to give my animal. So what we would like is to convene a work group comprised of representatives from the veterinary schools in Virginia, the Virginia Office of Veterinary Services, the Virginia Veterinary Association, and the Virginia Farm Bureau to develop recommendations on how to incentivize the number of large animal veterinary degrees sought in Virginia, as well as ways to keep those graduates in the Commonwealth to help alleviate the shortage. We would also like to talk about the utility scale solar growth and the impacts on farm and forest lands. We would urge you to oppose any legislation inhibiting local zoning authority in the development of utility scale solar projects, encourage the development of utility scale solar operations on reclaimed mine sites or other subprime lands rather than on agriculture and forest lands, continue to support the regulatory requirements for minimizing, avoiding, or mitigating when disturbing farmland or forest land in the location of the proposed utility solar facility, and continue to look at alternative sources for carbon-free or carbon-neutral energy generation. With this as well, I would like to encourage that some exploration be given to requiring nutrient management plans for these type of facilities as well. So as I alluded to earlier, in agriculture, we have to have these plans which, we have to abide by that allows us to put down certain fertilizers at certain amounts that will be utilized by the land. There's nothing restricting these facilities in doing such, which in turn, if they are allowed to do so, will end up impacting our ability to meet the Chesapeake Bay regulation minimums that we're trying to get to. And it has the potential for some very, very detrimental environmental impacts. That's all I got. So thank you very much.
No,
You always got something to say. I knew you were going to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. No, I appreciate it, Katie, and yeah, I know there's a big push to try to make sure that we're staying on top of the best management practices and making sure that's properly funded. And then I'm anticipate there is going to be a lot of discussion this year, probably with respect to nutrient plans and the solar as well. And we'll see how that goes. But
Okay.
be very happy for your insight as those discussions progress.
I appreciate all the statistics that you gave us and being very direct in your asks. It's helpful to us. One of the things that I just wanted to touch base really quickly on, I'm glad to hear that that number of new farmers that are entering this space. Just quickly, programs that have helped encourage that, what successes have you seen from your perspective on that?
So there is the FarmLink program that VDAX, and I know Farm Bureau was instrumental in that as well. And I will give you some kind of personal examples too. So there are our Virginia cooperative extension agents that are out in the field that are very, very much aware of farms that might not have someone in that next generation to come forward or doesn't want to. And those extension agents have put a lot of people that want to get involved or might be involved already on a small scale but wanting that to be their full-time career, partnering those two together and doing a lot of workshops and programs on farm planning and transitioning. Farm Credit is doing similar programs as well. So our ag community is a pretty tight community, and we all kind of somehow know each other anyway, somehow, shape, or form. And we're all passionate about it, so we're very much aware of, you know, who's kind of at what stage in their operation and who's new and coming, and utilizing all the different resources that are available to make those partnerships work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. So on behalf of the Culpeper Chamber of Commerce, I want to extend just a special thank you to all of our presenters today. We really appreciate your time and your expertise and sharing this information with us. I'd like to thank our legislators and representatives for being here to be a part of these conversations. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending and participating in the conversations. So thank you all very much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.